Welcome to this special lesson. We'll be talking about project planning. As we've talked about project management, it's very critical for us to mention about the planning process. So in this lesson, we want to talk about the planning phase of project management. So learning about how to make a project plan is very critical to the success of every project. Remember, from the project planning phase, we jump straight into project implementation. And at this stage of the planning, we need to get everything right so that it will guide us throughout the implementation process of our project. Now let's get into it. When we talk about project planning, what are we talking about? As I've said, planning is about a roadmap. It's about creating a guideline for your work that you have to do. And the plan sets us on the path. It helps us to know what are the things we need to do and when we have to do it and all the basic things that we have to carry on. Let's jump into it. There are a couple of plans that you need to develop when you are creating a project plan. One is you have a project plan, you have financial plan, you have quality plan, risk plan, communications plan, procurement plan, change management plan. These plans are important to develop to help you manage every piece of the project or every aspect of the project. And of course, all these plans come together, make up a holistic project plan, helping us to understand the different things that we need to work on and how we're going to do them. Let's look at them one at a time. A project plan is basically looking at what exactly the project is focusing on and ensuring that we have a clear understanding of responsibilities of every stakeholders. In the project plan, we are able to clearly define the roles of every stakeholder, specifically looking at the functional managers within the organization and also the program or project managers who are working on the project. And the project plan helps us to come up with a standard on how we're going to communicate the different tools that we're going to use throughout the project lifecycle. It also helps us to give a clear understanding of the different contractors and different stakeholders, ensuring that the objectives and requirements of the project are well communicated. And then it also gives us the opportunity to clearly identify inconsistencies in the planning phase. This will prevent us from not doing things or planning for things that we don't have included in the project. So we want to make a plan based on what is important and what concerns the project. And then project plan also helps us to identify problems early and address these critical areas as well as identifying project risks. So the project plan is the document that is clear enough to give us a clear understanding of what the project objectives are, the requirements, the stakeholders, and every role and responsibility on the project. To clearly define what are we going to do and who is going to do what and what are we going to be achieving on this project. And so when it comes to the financial plan is the monetary, the budgetary aspect of the project plan. So in the financial plan, we look at things like labor costs. Those are direct costs to the project. So for you to implement a project, you need direct costs. The money that you invest to implement a particular project. And so you have to pay labor, people who are going to be working on the project. Those are contractors and people you hire to directly work on the project. So you will need to think about how much are you going to spend on the labor personnel. And then you also have an item of equipment. So if you're going to procure equipment for your project, how much are you going to spend on that? Look at the materials you're going to need for your project as well. How much will it cost? You need to also come up with a unit cost for every line item in terms of labor, how much you're going to spend on labor, how many persons you're going to hire, how much you're going to pay each of them to accumulate total cost for labor. You got equipment. What are the equipment you're going to buy and how much are you going to spend for each? What are the materials you need and how much you're going to buy each material for? So the labor cost, you have a total cost. For example, if you'll be spending 50,000 on labor costs, how is that 50,000 going to be used? What's the breakdown of the 50,000 for labor costs? So how much are you going to be paying each person that you hire to accumulate to reach to that amount of spending 50,000 on labor? Same as equipment, same as materials. And then you got administrative costs. This could be looking at the administrative, like communications and some administrative costs that you're going to incur on the project. You have the overhead cost. The overhead cost is looking at indirect costs or fixed costs for your project. Those are costs, those are money you spend looking at rentage, utilities, current, fuel, electricity, internet, salary of employees, and other money you spend on maybe software, advertisement, and so on. Extra money spent, apart from what you directly invest into the project, you have to include it as an overhead cost. Then you have contingency. Contingency is a percentage of a particular budget that is being added to the original budget to serve as a backup plan. For example, if you need $10,000 to implement a particular project, you may consider a contingency of 10%, which will mean 10% of 10,000 is 1,000. So 1,000 added to the 10,000 is 11,000. So the 11,000 becomes the project budget, but you know that the 10%, which is 1,000 extra added to the 10,000, is a contingency budget. That enables you to have a backup plan in case of any issue or prices increment or other circumstances around implementing your project. And this is very critical as well. So you need to look at the percentage of a budget that's going to go for contingency. Then you have the quality plan. The quality plan is very critical, very important. With the quality plan, we are able to identify all of the organization's external and internal stakeholders. So the first thing we need to know is that organizations work with stakeholders. Projects concern stakeholders. And we have internal and external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are stakeholders that work within the organization. Those can be donors, it could be project staff or organizational staff, and other people who are directly within the organization cycle, departments, managers, and so many other employees. External stakeholders are people who are not part of the organization or are not within, they are out of the organization. This could be looking at suppliers, people that you're going to hire, and other external stakeholders you need to work with. It could even include a customer as well, the person you'll be maybe implementing for also. So you need to look at them and identify these stakeholders. Now, developing a quality plan means that every stakeholder has their own level of involvement on the project, external stakeholders and internal stakeholders. So the purpose of quality plan is to design process that produces the features desired by the project. It is to clearly define what the project will deliver, what the quality will be like, or the features. Think, for example, you want to build a handpump. What the handpump will be like? What's the quality standard? What are the material specifications you're going to procure? These are some of the features you need to come up with. Think about building a school. What will be included in the school? What are the things? Are you going to include a library, laboratory, and other classrooms? What are you going to do with the class? How will it be designed? How big will it be? And all of that. So what's the quality of structure you're going to build? These are things that you need to discuss when it comes to quality plan. And this cannot be discussed in the absence of stakeholders. Internal and external stakeholders have to be involved in defining the quality. Why? Internal stakeholders will define the quality in terms of what we need for the project. External stakeholders are important to provide you the needed quality. For example, suppliers. You will need suppliers to give you the reference material or equipment for your project within the quality you've defined. So you need to bring in stakeholders in the early stage of the process to ensure that they are all aware of the quality standard for your project. So this is critical because if you don't involve stakeholders at the early stage and you define your quality without their involvement, it might be difficult to meet the quality standard because they don't even know what exactly you were planning as a quality. So they all need to be involved and agree upon the quality specification for the project so that at the end of it all, we can evaluate the project and determine the success based on the quality standard. So let's talk about another aspect of quality plan. It helps the organization to be responsive to changing stakeholder needs. Because the thing is, one of the complexities of project management is managing stakeholders' expectations. Everybody has their expectation, needs on the project. So to clearly define what exactly this project aims to achieve, we need to come up with a quality plan. And the quality plan will help us determine what is needed or what is expected. What standard are we going to deliver? And then our implementation of the project, we are able to respond to what the stakeholders need. And at the end of the project, we can deliver exactly what stakeholders need. And then the quality plan also makes sure that we prove the process that is working, that quality goals are being met. So at the end of every phase of the project, we will measure the impact or the achievement of the project against the quality plan as to whether we were able to deliver according to the quality that we agree upon. And the purpose of project management is to satisfy customers. If you implement a project and customers are not satisfied, then it means that you have not met their quality needs. So meeting their quality needs can be a great way to satisfy customers and make sure that they even give you another responsibility. We got risk plan. Risk plan is very critical. And then when we talk about risk plan, it's a document. It's a document that we develop to make sure we have a clear understanding of the risk management strategy. So the number one thing we need to do when it comes to risks is to identify them. So we do risk identification in our risk registrar. We come and have a brainstorming session with our team to discuss all the potential risks that a particular project could be experiencing or could encounter. After doing all of the categorization of the risks, we do an analysis of them. The risk analysis will be looking at which rate is high, which rate is low, and even the medium level as well. We also will look at the impact of the risk on our project. How does this risk affect our project if it occurs? And then we also look at the probability of a particular risk. That is it possible for this risk to occur? Will this happen? How likely is it for it to happen? What's the probability of this happening? So when we define that and we categorize these different risks and we determine the probability, that is whether this will happen or not, there are some risks that are not likely to happen. It might be very difficult for it to happen, but we may include it because we think that it is a risk, but it may be difficult. The probability of it happening is 0. But there are some risks that have a higher probability, very likely to happen. So in this kind of instances, we need to make an adequate plan on how we're going to address or respond to these issues when they occur. So once we have done all of the risk identification and risk analysis, we then do what we call the risk management plan. The risk management now we talk about mitigation strategy. What are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do if this happens? What's our response if this happens? What's a fallback position if this happens? So the risk plan will detail the potential risks, the level of risk in terms of the probability and how high the risk and how low it is. And then we discuss our strategy for mitigating risks. And then we plan for adequate resources, of course, because when you're responding to risks, you need adequate resources like human, money, and somehow time. Another great aspect to talk about when it comes to project planning is communications plan. Communications plan is a very critical aspect of project management. There's no way you can manage a project without effective communication. And this aspect of project planning is where we clearly determine the way to communicate on the project. This could be verbal communication, whether we're going to do this as a talk-to-talk, whether it's email communication, that's strictly internet, online, email, and we have telephone, phone calls. So you have to determine the way, the method of communication from within the project, within the organization, or within the project team. And this is very important because it helps to clearly establish the channel of communication and how we're going to do it. After determining that, you need to appeal to the interests of those affected. Obviously, it's critical that the project will have to be appealing. You have to be somehow persuasive in terms of engagement with different stakeholders. So how are you going to engage different stakeholders on the project? Remember, when we talk about stakeholders, we said that there are stakeholders who have interest on the project. There are stakeholders who have power but don't have interest. There are stakeholders who have interest and power. There are stakeholders who don't have power and don't have interest. So all these stakeholders have different level of engagement as it comes to how we communicate with them. We need to also give feedback when others communicate to you. So that's very critical in communications planning. So we need to regularly communicate and feedback with people when they communicate. So that's the reason why it's good to establish the way you want to communicate at the initial stage, whether it's going to be verbally, email, or telephone. That will allow your team to know what channel to use to communicate with you if they want to reach out, and how they need to reach out to other people on the project. So everybody agree that on this project, official communication will be done through email. So even if you call me and so on, you still have to send it through email so that we can have it documented. Then we also have keep on record what you communicate. It's very critical. So everything you communicate, keep it on record. If you are using email communication, it's advisable to create a label, a folder in your email where you can put all the documents you're receiving through that particular project in that folder so that you can account for every information you receive. Then you have test effectiveness through reliance on others to carry out your instructions. So one of the ways to test how effective your communication is to be able to give out responsibility to people and see if they will carry it out according to what you told them. That will show you were able to give them clear instructions. This is very important. So we should communicate on the project very clearly and in a way that people can understand and carry out the action that we want them to carry out. Then we have procurement plan. The procurement plan is the planning we develop to help us define the needs for the project. This can look at the goods we need, the services, and the works. So it's important for us to mention it. And when it comes to procurement is looking at acquiring goods or services from external suppliers. So we need to acquire goods and services from external suppliers. So the first thing we need to do, what are the things we need on the project? Equipment, materials, services. What do we need exactly? We need to define them. For example, if we need computer for the project, maybe for the project team to have a very, very effective workflow, we need computer. That is a need for the project. So we need to develop a plan on how we're going to procure the computer and all of that. And then you got development of the procurement statement of work, specifications, and our work breakdown structure. So what are the specifications? Once we define what we need, for example, we need a computer. It's not enough. Because when we go in the store, we're not telling them when we need a computer. They will ask us, what kind of computer do you need? So we need to define the specifications. What kind of computer do you need? So we need to clearly develop that aspect of the procurement. All right. What's the specification of the computer? What's the memory space? What's the RAM space? And what's the SAS? And everything must be discussed clearly so that we can communicate that with external suppliers to give us exactly what we need. Performing a make or buy analysis. So how are we going to buy or whatever, make or request in terms of that, right? So the processes of requesting. So the departments may establish, you have a procurement team or manager where the departments will have to put in their requests and so on. So there must be a clearly established pathway for how we put in our request. And throughout the process, there must be a layout milestones and the timing and schedule. So within the procurement plan, we should have a clear plan on the timing. When do we want to procure a particular item? So when do we want to procure the computer? What's the schedule in terms of delivery? So when are we going to start the procurement process and when do we need it to end? So the start and the end date, they are very important to determine. This will help us track progress and see how far we've gone with the process. Another aspect of the procurement plan is to do cost estimating. How much do we need for every line item for the computer? How much are we going to spend? And the quantity we need. Very important. So these are things you need to think about when it comes to procurement plan. So another aspect of it is, as I said, you need to determine the resources to procure for your project. Resources include services like human, if you're going to hire consultant, so on. They are all part of procurement. Then you got goods, materials, equipment, those things that you need to procure. Identify the selection criteria. How is the selection going to be done? What are you looking at? Are you looking at quality, timely delivery, performance, track record, legality, and other aspects of as well? So the selection criteria must be clearly identified to help you to avoid selecting the wrong supplier. That is the purpose of it. It helps you to, it prevents you from selecting the wrong supplier and helps you to select the right supplier and get the right material or resource you need. So preparing a list of possible project procurement risks is also very important. What are some of the potential risks? Developing a procurement plan could be very, very great enough. So developing a procurement plan will cover, like I said, what are the items you need, material, resources, and so on, materials, goods, or services, works, equipment. What do you need? Define the items. You also need to come up with a clear specifications, right? And then you also need to come up with the cost. How much do you want to spend on it? Or what's the budget for it? Also need to come up with the quantity. How much of it do you need? Who is going to use it? When do you need to procure it? Those are very important things to determine. So you need to also look at how is it going to be authorized. Remember, the organization should have a clear and established structure on how procurement can be authorized. So for us to go and procure, it can't just happen like that. We can't just take money and go procure. There must be a process for authorization or approval. So how is it going to be done? Who is going to affix signatures? Who are the signatories to approve a particular purchase? So obtaining an authorization and approval to proceed, there must be a clearly defined authorization matrix that we have to define so that anyone who wants to procure a particular item based on the threshold, the amount, then we are able to know the signatories required, because the finance team will need those signatories to make payment. We got change management plan. Change management plan helps us to identify potential changes, analyze change requests. There might be changes on a project. Of course, we plan a project very well, but it may not go exactly as planned. There might be requests for changes in some of the scope or some other aspect of the project. So we need to firstly identify the potential changes, analyze the change, evaluate the change, plan for the change, and implement the change. So it helps us to clearly define that. Change management is also not looking at changes to the project directly. It's also looking at changes in the beneficiaries as well. Because when you implement project, you are creating new product. You are trying to improve life. And also, there might be resistance from even the stakeholders because they got used to a certain way of life and you want to change their way of living. So how do you manage that? You first need to identify potential changes. What are the things you are about to change? How are you going to analyze, implement that? And what awareness do you think you can create to be persuasive to the beneficiaries in accepting a new change? Let's take a common example. You are working within an organization and you want to introduce a new software. This is a software that's going to help the organization be effective, efficient, all right, to improve their work productivity. Now, it's easier to say that, but it's difficult because the employees might not be okram or used to the platform that you want to bring. They may not be flexible in using it at the onset. So the first thing is you need to know that this is a new software you want to introduce, and the employees are yet to be able to know what exactly the software is about and how they can use it. So it requires some level of strategy on how you're going to make that change. It could be number one, providing training for your team, ensuring that they have the knowledge and skills to navigate through that platform, adequate training and patience with them to make sure they learn it and be able to do it. But it can't just be instant for it to happen. So there must be a change management plan. When you introduce something new, there's a change always. So that change must be managed as well. And there are a lot of strategies you can introduce to manage that. You need to also review and then close the change, right? And then, like I said, in some instances, the project might require some changes, adjustments, so you can do it as necessary. Then we have the work breakdown structures. The work breakdown structure is what we call WBS. It helps us to be able to break down the different work we need. Every project has different works, activities, tasks, and those different tasks can be divided into subtasks. So the work breakdown structure defines and organizes work elements into smaller parts. So take, for instance, we need to conduct training. To conduct training, there are a lot of things that we have to prepare to do that, to conduct the training. So we divide our training into smaller parts. For example, developing the training materials, securing the venue, preparing the logistics, and so many other things, getting participants to confirm, and so many things that we have to do to get our training successful. Though the training might be held in 2 days or 3 days, remember, there are a lot of planning we need to get involved to make sure that the 3-day or 2 days planning training can be successful. That requires us defining the different tasks, organizing them into smaller parts, assigning them to different team members to implement it. Then we have organization breakdown structure. This brings together the people needed to do the job. So after we have breaking down the different tasks, we've organized the different work into smaller parts. We need to now assign people on the different parts. So we got the OBS, which is the organization breakdown structure. So as we assign the different work, the job we have, we need to have every team member assigned to the specific job they can. And also, responsibility assignment matrix come about, where we identify different team members interacting, how they interact with the activities of the project. So it's very important to know that project participants interact with the activities of the project. So we have to look at how they interact in terms of how does this particular person relate with this particular person, because their work relationship is not far. There are some team members that will be implementing a particular task that is dependent on another person implementing. So that person must be done before the other person pick up from there. So we need to really identify how they interact, the working relationship, and then how does the different project work align with each other in terms of the team and how they're going to work. And this will help us to introduce what we call collaboration and teamwork, because if there's collaboration and teamwork, it enables the team to know that they are not working alone, even though they have different tasks assigned, but they are actually working to complement each other, because everyone is contributing towards one common goal. So the work breakdown structure is a basic kind of a deliverable stuff that we break down the different components of the project into smaller parts. And this will help us to easily manage the project. So for example, you can see on the screen, you have a construction of a house, and you need to have a breakdown of this. For example, you got the internal portion of it where you got the electricity, the roof, the roughing, electrical, and other things that have to be done in the internal part. And of course, sometimes the people who build the structure may not be the one to do the particular electrical work. And then you got the foundation. The foundation of the building can be done by the contractors as well that you'll be hiring to do the work. And there is different budget for that because it's a separate phase of the project. You have the external part, which is the machinery work. Those are design related other stuff that they will be able to do. So designers will come and then do the design of the house after it's being built. So there are a lot of different levels when it comes to this. So level 1 is deliverables, which is 100%, looking at the different deliverables in terms of electrical work and so many other internal work on the building. Then you have the foundational level, which is looking at all the different things I need to do, ensuring that the building is constructed. You got the internal level, also looking at the external levels, looking at the design of the building. So, but when it comes to the project organization work breakdown structure, is looking at the leadership of the organization in terms of the project. So, what is the leadership? There are different structure of an organization. You got functional structure, you got matrix structure. So, within an organization, you have to come up with the structure in terms of how the organization operates. When it comes to project as well, there are a lot of people working on the project, so they need to have a very clear structure on how they work. So at the top level, you have the project manager, and the project manager is the head of the project, is the one working with the entire project team to make sure things work, to implement project tasks and carry on the project work effectively and efficiently. Then you have the bottom level, you got managers or leaders who are heading different departments. So these are people heading different departments of the project. Could be the IT department, the engineering department, the construction department, safety department, the design department, communication, and other aspects of the project as well. And every department has team. they got team members assigned on every department, working with the department head or department leader. So that is basically what a project organization structure is. And so every department works to implement the project using their knowledge and skills to complete a different section or phase of the project. And they all report to the project manager. So the project management organizational structure is basically used to determine the hierarchy, the authority of people involved in a specific project. And this will help us to communicate, to help us to have a clear understanding of what we call the chain of command and decision making. And then the structure defines each team member's function and the reporting lines on a chart for team members to reference during a project. So it will clearly tell you who is supervising a particular work, who you are assigned to, who do you report to, who do you communicate to if there are issues, and all of that, and then give you a clear rundown of how the whole project runs. So there must be leadership for every project, because if there is no leadership for the project, then it becomes difficult for the project to work. And in fact, if there's no organizational structure, the project cannot effectively be implemented. So there are logical relationship and critical pathway in project management. And so the logical relationship is looking at the network diagram, which displays the relationship between the interdependence of the project activities. How does the project activities relate with each other? Then the critical pathway is looking at the longest path through the network and determine the duration of the project. So the logic or network diagram communicates the link between different project activities, and the critical pathway method also tells you how long a particular pathway will go. So based on the dependency of the project, the interconnection of the different project activities, how long will the project be going for? Say, for instance, you have 4 activities, and you have activity 1 to be implemented in 3 months, activity 2 in 3 months, and so on. So if you calculate these 4 activities implemented quarterly, it will create a whole year plan. So it will tell you how long the project will last for in terms of the duration of the project. So that's it for project planning. These are some of the things that we have in terms of planning. There are different plans we develop on the project. We talked about quality plan, procurement plan. We talked about the financial plan, project plan. There's so many other aspects like change management plan, communications plan. These plans help us to really have a clear roadmap for the project, and it guides the team throughout the project implementation phase. Thank you very much.